29,000 miles from Earth, in the blackness of space, there is a giant rock called the Moon. And in the year 2087, its future will be in the hands of one man. Eddie Murphy is
Pluto Nash.
Pluto Nash.
It is a pleasure to meet
In this era of American cinema, I feel like it was the last that we saw of these types of trailers. You know, like the fatties. I'm going to reference Tropic Thunder
That
because
is exactly what I was thinking when I was watching that trailer.
Jack Black plays a character named Jeff Portnoy, who is kind of like an Eddie Murphy character.
It's basically a ripoff, like,
of the Nutty Professor. And they're like, Jeff Portnoy.
Jeff Portnoy. Jeff Portnoy. And Jeff Portnoy are the Fatties, Part 2.
We have done away with that type of trailer for a long time. I think this was the point in history where America was like, enough.
I hope so.
Do not talk down to me, narrator guy. Stop treating me like a fat American dumbass.
Maybe the Adventures of Pluto Nash has a silver lining. This is where we turned a corner.
Letting loose this summer.
Hola, everybody. Welcome in. It's another episode of your favorite movie review podcast, Just Play It. We are your hosts. That is Nick.
And that's James.
Yeah, we kind of switched it up. You didn't see that coming.
This podcast keeps people on their toes, and that's what I love about it.
Every week. Speaking of keeping you on your toes, we are going in a complete different direction than last week. Haha, just kidding. We're staying in outer space. And it's called The Adventures of Pluto Nash from 2002.
It's known in a lot of circles as just a bad movie.
When you hear that something is so bad, or you hear something is so good, I don't know about you, and if I just enjoy playing devil's advocate, but I do like to go into it thinking, I'm going to think the opposite.
I'm an adversarial person by nature. We've talked about it on this podcast. I hate the critics, so I want the critics to be wrong.
I'm always preying on their downfall, dude.
Yeah, and this is the point of this series that we do, where we take these really, really, really bad movies, right? We call it our flop-busters, and we say, hey, did they deserve to flop? Because, like you said, I don't trust the critics. So I don't find them a very trustworthy crew. So, yeah, I'm 100% with you. I really want to like the quote-unquote bad movies and hate the quote-unquote good movies.
Yeah, we are the defiant ones. We are Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre. I could be Jimmy Iovine because my name's James. And you could
I'll be Dr.
Dre,
clearly because of the resemblance.
This movie was directed by Ron Underwood. And now this guy, this was his second to last feature directing gig. And I don't know if it's because of how bad this went. People thought,
What was his last directing gig? Do you recall?
I think it was like Stealing Sinatra or something.
So he might have just done two bad movies in a row and lost his Hollywood card.
Let's see the reviews on this one.
That's not a good reaction.
No, wow. There's not even a tomato meter on it, and the audience score is 23.
Yeah, so Ron Underwood really he didn't even get a third strike. They said 1, 2, that's enough.
So I guess if you pull a Pluto Nash followed by a 23% stinker back to back, you are going to end up with a lot more television episodic directing gigs, which is what he did. There's a laundry list of different TV shows and single episodes that he has directed since then. So good on you, Ron, for staying busy and having consistent work. Consistent work is good work in this business, as we say. Am I right, Nick? Because we're totally in that show business circle.
Hey, show business, not show business. Steady work is good work.
It's show business, not no business. You know what I'm saying? But before then, he directed the movie City Slickers with Billy Crystal, a movie that I am fond of, which is Mighty Joe Young. I don't know if you've seen that one. That's that gorilla movie with Charlize Theron.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen it in a long time. Might have to add that one to the list.
I haven't seen it in a long time either. Maybe it's horrible. Who knows? But I liked it. And lastly, he directed Tremors. I am partial to Tremors too, for whatever reason. I think I like the little tremors that were like raptors and they ran around on two legs, even though the whole point is that they're underground monsters.
Yeah. Bit of a cult classic. where it's like so bad it's good. So I don't know if that's a plus to his abilities, but
I'll call it a plus. One point for Ron Underwood.
I'll call it a wash.
This movie stars Eddie Murphy, Rosario Dawson, and Randy Quaid, who is a nut job.
Yeah, I'm surprised when you had texted me during the week. Do you know Randy Quaid and what he's about? I was surprised you didn't.
Can you enlighten the crowd if they are unaware of the Randy Quaid phenomenon?
I mean, he hit drugs and alcohol. I believe he was bankrupt and homeless for a while. At this point in the game, he's just kind of a right-wing conspiracy nut. Just funny. I was talking to you about it. I kind of refer to him as like the right-wing Rob Reiner. Say that 5 times fast.
He's the right Rob Reiner.
The right Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner, obviously not as like mentally crazy, but very hard left is his persona. Randy Quaid is the exact opposite way, but yeah, he had a weird downfall.
I was reading that him and his wife like dodged a fat bill from a hotel in Santa Barbara, and they accused the innkeeper of like fraud, and I think there was some destruction of property involved, and they've been basically on the run from law enforcement and what they call the Hollywood Star Whackers, which they believe is a group kind of like the Illuminati or some other like made up group that doesn't exist, and they are very insistent that they exist and they're out to kill celebrities. But Randy Quaid and his wife are on the run from the Hollywood Star Whackers, who they believe killed Heath Ledger, and apparently next on the list is Randy.
I can't imagine any list where Randy's on the top other than a most wanted.
Why would you be the next priority? So they're seeking asylum in Canada. They're staying in hotel rooms. They're sleeping in their Prius. I don't know, dude. It's wild. This guy's in so much movies, and he probably has so much money, his net worth, but he's such a nut.
I think he lost most of it. I could be wrong, but I think he lost a lot of it. And now, obviously, the easy trivia question. This is the older brother of Dennis Quaid.
Yes.
So the Quaid brothers are both Hollywood guys. Dennis Quaid, fun fact, out here, I know he lives part-time out here in Nashville. I go to the same driving range as him. Seen him around. Good old Dennis Quaid.
You should ask him about his brother Randy and what hotel he's sleazing it up at in Canada. I don't think he wants to talk about
Randy. I have a sneaking suspicion he has no desire to talk to a stranger about his brother.
It does not hurt to ask.
Back to Pluto Nash.
So Randy Quaid is in this movie. So that aside, I'm not going to have it affect my view of this movie about how crazy of a person this is. We're going to focus on the adventures of Pluto Nash. Like I mentioned earlier, this movie notoriously is on top 10 list or bottom 10 lists of the worst reviewed movies ever. For whatever reason, it got singled out, and it's given like a 5% on Rotten Tomatoes, or a 12% here, or a bottom 10th% here. Whatever. People universally have agreed this is a horrible movie. So we at the Just Play It podcast, we want to come in and try and be Captain Save a Pluto. We want to have some sort of redemption. We want to have some sort of good score for Adventures of Pluto Nash. This is another entry into the FLOP-BUSTER series. But Nick, one more caveat. This was also a box office disaster. This is a bomb. We have our very first Venn diagram, a combination. Box office bomb meets flop.
It's not just a Venn diagram. These are overlapping circles.
This is 2 circles put over each other. You know when you put a drink down on a table and you put it down the exact same spot, but it's a little bit off? That's pretty much what we're doing.
Ring on the coffee table.
Yeah, so Pluto Nash makes a thick ring on the wood coffee table. This movie does not respect wood. So this flick, this piece of something, I was going to say piece of art, but it's not that. This has broken our 40-40 rule. Now, the 40-40 rule, by definition, for the Just Play It podcast, across the board, on an average, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, IMDb, different reviewing websites, On average, this got rated below a 40% flop, critical flop. Because there's movies that are a 5 or a 6 or a 4.9.
It could be a bad movie without being a flop.
Yeah, but we're saying like, wow, this really did not jive with a lot of people. So boom, 40, flop. On the flip side, going off our integrity of our podcast, Stealth, we labeled that a box office bomb. Now, Stealth had a budget of
130-ish, yeah.
Yeah, 135 million. It only took in 79 million. By definition, that's around 58-60%. So we're going to call that the cap just for now. These things may, who knows?
If it only makes 60% of what it costs to create the film, right? You lose out for that chasm between budget and box office is 40% or more. That's our bomb, right?
Exactly, because something can be a box office failure or not considered a success. You can have a $150 million movie and it only brings in 130, but that's not really bombing at the box office.
That's a box office disappointment.
When we say something bombs, we're saying it's losing 40% of its budget.
A lot of people got fired. We'll say
lots of people got fired. Careers were changed.
Ron
Underwood got thrown underwood the bus, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We are talking terrible disaster at the box office meets terrible critical review. This movie, first of its kind in its category, this is not only a flop buster, this is a bombastic review. This is our first flom or blop or flablop, whatever you want to call it, Nick. Go ahead.
I have nothing. I was just going to say shit.
Answer box office disaster.
That's what I was going to go with.
Bombastic reviews. Flop-bastic. It sucks. Worse than LeBron James.
So just play it. We feel the need to investigate if this movie did in fact deserve to flop critically and investigate the reasons of why it may have bombed. Now, Nick has no idea of the budget or the gross. Last time on Stealth, I was the one guessing what the budget was and what the gross was. Now, the tables have turned. I know the budget, and Nick needs to guess the budget and the return on this movie in theaters. So he will go ahead and take his best guess as to both dollar amounts, where I will reveal at the end.
I feel like we've set the stage here, buddy.
And with that said, I'm going to read this log line, which is very vague. In the future, a man struggles to keep his lunar nightclub out of the hands of the mafia. Period.
It's very vague.
Very straightforward. Or is it? Are they leaving stuff out for their own benefit? Let's find out in...
Plot talk!
Plot talk.
Plot talk.
We open up on a lunar moon landscape that's called Little America. That's what they named the moon. We're in the year 2080. We go into this disgusting looking dive bar, and Anthony is a character who is played by Jay Moore, and he's kind of going through an identity crisis. He's pretending to be Scottish and doing like some sort of cultural song or dance or something on stage.
He's wearing a kilt.
He's performing in this failing, pathetic nightclub. I'm saying, where is Space John Taffer when you need him?
Shut it down!
These drinks are dirty.
So Pluto's in this bar, and he drinks out of his glass. There's lipstick stains on the glass. He goes to the bathroom in the back. The dishes in the sink are all moldy.
Disgusting.
A very solid point to tell you this place is gross. Now, let me just say, I love Jay Moore. I love Jay Moore as a stand-up comic. Stuff he's acted in. Big Jay Moore guy over here.
Okay. I was going to say, Jay Moore, I see in a lot of these era of movies, but not really a lot today.
Drug problems, drinking problems.
Classic.
Unfortunate. I will say he's turned around. He's sober now. I do keep up with his career, and he's making a bit of a comeback. Love Jay Moore.
Pluto Nash is friends with Jay Moore, who we learn owns this pathetic bar. Coming out the gates hot, the Moon Mafia walk in.
Even on the moon, the mob is there, and they're Italian.
The mob is still Italian, and they still are no fucks. They come in and tie up Anthony, or Tony Francis, which is a name Pluto says that Jay Moore's character should go by. He says, "You should be Italian. It's more sexy and appealing." They tie him up, kind of gag him. They're ready to pour like gasoline down his throat or something.
No. I want to point this out. It's not gasoline. It is battery acid in a canister that says battery acid on it.
Oh, so, well, the mob is organized.
Yeah, but it looks like it was manufactured. Like somebody could just go out and purchase battery acid in a container.
The moon. You don't know what's going on there.
Just saying.
They're angry at Anthony because he borrowed $2.5 million to buy this piece of shit place and apparently has paid no money back. $0.
The bar's in debt. It's not making any money.
It needs to go on Moon Bar Rescue ASAP.
It's gross.
So we learned Pluto just got out of prison and is cool with a couple of the mob members that are on the inside, that are in prison.
We have a little bit of like an Escape from New York vibe with Snake Plissken, right? Where people find out like, oh, you are Pluto Nash? Where it was like, you're Snake Plissken, you're famous. We get a little bit of reason why he's famous. It turns out he was a smuggler.
It's more reason than Escape from New York gave us. They kept repeating, "Oh my God, you're Snake Plissken. You're Snake Plissken. You're Snake Plissken."
Yeah, we all know that the reasoning for Snake Plissken's infamy was Fresno Bob.
Well, Fresno Bob rides hard, and I'm a big Fresno Bob fan. I want to know what the hell happened to him.
This podcast is pro Fresno Bob, lest anyone be confused.
We are pro Josh Lucas, and we are pro Fresno Bob. If you're an avid listener of our podcast, welcome to the club. You know what we're talking about, baby.
So he was a famous smuggler, apparently getting merchandise or contraband from Earth to the moon is a big business. So Pluto Nash went away for 7-8 years. I think we end up finding out. He had a name for himself in the criminal underworld. Pluto Nash was a very famous smuggler.
What they call it? Like it's not rift jumper. It's
it wasn't worth remembering. I'll tell you that much.
Pluto, trying to help out his friend Jay Moore, he basically offers to pay off the debt and run the place. How does he have this much money? I guess from his smuggling days. If the moon authorities allowed him to keep all of his profits from smuggling.
Yeah, that was a little odd. It'd be one thing because he said, "I want to pay off the debt clean," but it would be one thing if he's like, "I'll assume the debt and run this place and pay you back." But he was like, "No, let me just buy it. $2.5 million. Okay." Boom.
We are fast forwarding to 7 years later. Stage is set. Nick, you are a big fan of movies just kicking it off. Was this some well-paced plot points for you?
I believe so, actually. At this point in the film, I'm going, okay, I'm on board, right? There's a colony on the moon. Didn't have to overly explain it. Pluto Nash, okay, he was a criminal. He just got out of prison, and now he's going to run this nightclub. That's a decent setup for me. I'm in.
And with this year being 2080, and we flash forward to 2087, do you think they were trying to kind of mirror a 1987 nightclub? Like the heydays of nightclubs and them being notorious and famous, like Club 54 or whatever.
I didn't think about that, but that sounds about right. It
crossed my mind.
Yeah.
You know, Eddie Murphy was huge in the 80s, and I don't know if I had some sort of subconscious thought thinking about the Chappelle Show and Charlie Murphy's Real Hollywood Stories, and he would tell stories about Rick James or Prince, and it would always pretty much open up in one of these famous nightclubs. Something clicked there for me, so that's where my train of thought went.
The costumes in the nightclub were very 80s-ish, right? A lot of like sleeveless shirts and tight pants and like high and tight haircut fades kind of deal.
And the dancing was very 80s too. Everyone
choreographed. It was kind of funny.
Everyone in Club Pluto was given the same instructions to dance a certain way.
It looked like a flash mob.
There's a couple establishing shots. We see that this is Club Pluto, and there's some sort of generic PA announcement outside that says, "Moon Beach is the only place in the universe where gambling is legal." Now, first off, sucks for Earth. Suck it, nerds. Move to the moon. Secondly, in the universe, are they saying that they have contacted other planets at this point, and there should be like aliens from different galaxies or solar systems? Because Or is that just like a selling point? They're just calling it the universe. Like America calls their sports champions world champions. Like we're just kind of
Well, because they
ignoring.
are.
We're ignoring everybody else.
And I will say, I appreciate that this movie didn't try to put any aliens into it. It was all humans living.
Oh, that would have been a whole nother can of worms. That we did not
I think
need.
they understood that limitation at least.
So Club Pluto is popping off.
Successful.
And very successful. Eddie Murphy, Pluto Nash, notorious smuggler turned very successful club owner, has turned this dump around. We are introduced to Dina Lake, played by Rosario Dawson. She is a singer. She's looking for a job, but this lady's from Earth.
Salt Lake City, specifically.
And I wondered if that's where her last name came from. The writers were just like, Lake. That's her last name. Who cares?
I didn't even notice it, but that does sound pretty lazy.
This is not important. I don't know who paid for her one-way ticket to the moon, but she got a one-way ticket to the moon, and her job or point of contact fell through, and she needs to pay her way back to Earth. And her father, who's named Nicky Sticks, who we never meet, told her that Pluto would be the type of guy to overlook an expired moon card. I guess this is the future's version of a green card or a work visa.
These damn illegal earthlings coming up to the moon and stealing our jobs.
Dicker moon jobs.
They're taking moon jobs, man. It's a problem.
Whoa. Speaking of the moon, A Trip to the Moon, which is a short film from George Méliès. This is referenced in this movie. It's a very famous short film. George Méliès is credited with introducing the idea of a narrative in a movie format. With this movie not doing too well with the critics, it's kind of like a lame attempt, like, oh, we have integrity. I said this is pretty much like if Randy Quaid had a poster of James Stewart on the wall while he's making a controversial video in this Canadian hideout hotel.
Yeah, it's like a I'm trying, but the rest of the film screams I'm not trying.
Speaking of Randy Quaid, he plays a robot bodyguard named Bruno.
The introduction of Bruno is where the movie starts to spiral.
Oh, already?
It really does, because this robot is very human. He makes a lot of like noises when he's walking, which is just real cheesy and bad. He kind of speaks like a robot, and he always has this like painted on smile on his face. It's where it starts to get real schlocky. Everything up to the introduction of Bruno, I was like, okay, all right, like this isn't half bad. And then Bruno comes in and I go, oh shit. Like this is, I can pinpoint where the movie starts its downhill trajectory, and this is it.
So, Nick, I see here that you wrote down on a note that we have some overtly stereotypical goons. They waltz into the club, and they're looking kind of doofy, actually.
Yeah, one of these guys he's just like cross-eyed with bleach blonde hair, kind of like the dumb, I don't know, yes, boss kind of goon. And then the other guy is just the very like right-hand man.
Joe Pantoliano.
He's the right-hand man of the main villain, who we haven't seen yet. And he's very, oh, my boss doesn't like no for an answer.
They do represent a mystery character named Rex Crater, who is apparently making a non-negotiable offer to buy Club Pluto for $10 million.
Apparently a very generous offer.
We do learn that the cash...
$10,000 bills.
First off, people still use cash in 2080. I guess they didn't predict that we would have Venmo or Zelle.
Cash is king.
Hey, this is 2087, and we are dealing with $10,000 bills featuring Hillary Clinton. If only she got elected, they would have called it. They would have had at least something going for them.
It was a funny touch.
Would it be funnier if it was Monica Lewinsky?
That would be hilarious.
These goons come in as representatives of Rex Crater, and Pluto Nash is like, why would I ever sell this place? It is the bomb. It's the best place in town. I sell out every single night. Get out of my face. There's a character named Miguel. He's played by Miguel A. Nunez Jr. I'm only bringing this guy up because of my very famous face recognition software in my brain. Did you recognize this guy at all?
No.
I recognized him from one movie, but I mean, I've probably seen him in a dozen. But this guy plays Joanna Man. Have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't heard that movie in a long time.
I'll read you guys the log line. A star basketball player decides to dress up as a woman and join the Women's Professional Basketball League when his on-court antics get him suspended. The current NBA situation, it reminded me of Ja Morant and his antics and how he's like flashing guns on IG Live and he's about to get hit with a fat suspension because of that. Or at least it's in the works as of this recording.
I hope he does.
If Ja Morant really gets slapped with that 50-game suspension, he should be Joanna Morant and join the WNBA and dress up as a lady.
Fuck the movie podcast. We need to start writing scripts. Stat. He can keep the hair long.
And he just needs to shave his face and then, Joanna Morant. Just out of nowhere, women's basketball phenomenon that can do acrobatic dunks.
I'm in for this. I'm in for this reality.
Just posterizing Candace Parker.
You never see nothing like it.
Just crossing up Sue Bird, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I know a couple WNBA players.
I was going to say, you maxed out my NBA knowledge. Or WNBA knowledge.
A little bit of a throwback face for me, Miguel Nunez Jr. Pluto denies this offer, and the mob is like, okay, we're going to explode your club.
Blow up the club. Escalates very fast.
This jumps into a chase scene.
Of course.
Rosario Dawson, she got a job as a waiter or waitress at this club from Pluto because we'll learn later that he's a horny bastard.
We'll get there.
And Rosario Dawson is obviously attractive, so he's like, okay, I guess I'll give you a job. So they get chased through the whatever city this is called. And I gotta say, this looks like Universal City Walk. Kind of reminds me of like a laser tag arena. This entire movie, all the interiors and the exteriors, they remind me of some sort of just facade,
Yeah.
It's very vast and very large, but it does look a little corny.
Yeah, 2002. It's like if you played a space video game on the PlayStation. It's very much like that.
Like nowadays, if you watch like a Star Wars movie or some sort of in the future or on Mars, it's not really too different from Earth. There may be some cooler technology aspects to it, but a lot of it's very silver or very earth tones.
Metallic, yeah.
Metallic, yeah. There's not a lot going on. With here, they're like, everything's a rainbow and neon lights and crazy colors.
A lot of neon lights, yeah. A very stark contrast from Fifth Element that we just reviewed. Fifth Element was a little more like gritty, a little more dingy, and this is a lot more, like you said, colorful.
Granted, this does take place on the moon, and it kind of feels like America's playground.
Yeah, it's a little Vegas-y.
Maybe Earth 2087 looks the same as it does now, but on the moon, they're like, this is a brand new colony, and we're going to make a whole new stylistic aspect to our architecture.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Why not? The goons chase Pluto and Dina, and they end up in a different club, and there's this whole shoot 'em up scene.
Bruno is apparently packing two, I guess, the space weapon equivalent of 50 cal magnums.
Bruno stays strapped.
These hand cannons, and just starts ruining things. First off, the moon seems lawless.
Like I said, Little America's playground.
I never saw a moon cop.
No moon cops, actually.
There was no law enforcement in this film. At no point was law enforcement involved in any of these moon shenanigans.
Moon-nanigans. He's strapped, he's popping shots, and with nowhere to go and needing to lay low, they go hide in a hotel, which is something Randy Quaid knows all about because he's on the run from the Hollywood Star Whackers. I'll be bringing this up all podcast.
You're going to be next on the list, James. You got to be careful.
They are listening. Now, Pluto meets up with a character named Roland, who's played by Peter Boyle. This is the father of Raymond.
Everybody loves Raymond. And my favorite role of his is Young Frankenstein. Mel Brooks is Young Frankenstein. He is the monster in that one. Classic film.
He's like a retired detective, right?
Yes. The only law enforcement on this planet is the retired detective.
Peter Boyle is our only hope. And he says Rex Crater might be a clone. He just drops that hint. And we're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll remember that.
So there's clones.
There's clones in this universe. And there is a clone doctor named Runa Padankin. I believe Roland says Rex Crater got in contact with to possibly make a clone of him. I don't know. But anyway, cloning got banned on Earth. Dr. Runa Padankin got murdered 8 years ago. But she had an assistant named Mona Zimmer. Now, Mona Zimmer, she works at this body alteration office. We jump into the scene. Pluto and Dina visit Zimmer because they want to get information on just kind of unravel the mysterious character of Rex Crater. Now, this scene, there's a...
Such an uncomfortable scene.
Iconic or uncomfortable, however you want to spin it. Nick, what happens in the scene?
So basically they take the individual and they show you what they can make you look like. So one of them is the Amazon feature where you basically look 8 feet tall. You look like one of the aliens from Avatar. And then there's one that's like the beach body. This is where it gets weird.
The Venice Beach is what Mona Zimmer calls it. She's very proud of it.
Oh, this one I'm particularly proud of. The Venice Beach.
Hey, wait a minute now. Now I think you done found something there. Look at that, honey.
Yeah, so Pluto looks like he's
Look
one
at
of those Venice Beach bodybuilders, right? Massive, looks like he's in a Mr. Universe competition. And then they see Dina, and all of a sudden, Pluto, the whole relationship has been pretty platonic up to this point.
Don't you mean plutonic?
Very good. Nice. I like that. That was good. So it's been pretty platonic, and all of a sudden he's like, yeah, give her more ass. Give her more ass. And they're like bumping out her ass. And then he's like, and then the titties. I want it to be like titties galore up in here. You're like, the fuck did this come from?
I'm looking and I'm thinking that you need to rethink the ass enhancement. It'll work. It'll help out. It'll bring out that little... But she also needs a little more of this, too. Up top, can you fix this? If you could spruce these up a little. I'm talking titties galore. Let's have titties really flowing. Oh, yeah.
He says, quote, titties galore.
Yeah, it really comes out of nowhere.
Very much out of left field. Very misogynistic. And after they get out of this scene... They get some information. We'll get into that. But they get out of the scene and Rosario Dawson's like, what the fuck, Eddie Murphy? No one's ever had a complaint about my ass. Pluto's like, oh, baby, I was just kidding. And it just reminded me of like a really terrible boyfriend who is like, hey, babe, you should work out. You'd be like, a little bit more hot. Haha. And then she would be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And he would say, just kidding. It was a joke.
Yeah, it was a really weird scene. Especially, I mean, they made a point to basically be like, Pluto Nash isn't that kind of guy. Like, he's not going to take advantage of a woman. They mentioned that when she first started working for him. And she's like, I'm not that kind of girl. And they're like, well, Pluto's not that kind of guy. And all of a sudden, Pluto's that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Pluto seems to be all talk, and Corbin Dallas is all walk. He will kiss an unconscious alien.
He's just Corbin Dallas.
Corbin Dallas shoots his shot. Pluto Nash, I'll say he tests the waters with quote-unquote jokes. Before that, they do get information out of Zimmer. Something about a suitcase and the initials WZW were left behind. I don't know. I was super taken aback by this body-shaming scene.
The whole scene was pretty odd.
Randy Quaid probably wrote this scene.
It sounds Randy Quaid-ish.
Sounds Randy-esque.
So eventually we get on the run again because the Rex Crater goons find them at the hotel they're staying at, and they steal this. I see you wrote down here, James, a boat of a Chrysler. Going back to what you're saying, James, about is the year 2080 like the 80s? It appears so.
Because the cars are massive. They're like moving rooms, but they still look like cars.
And there's this, what I assume to be like an AI in the car, almost like Kit from Knight Rider, but it's a hologram, and it's John Cleese. Which is great because everybody loves John Cleese.
Donald Sinclair from Rat Race.
He's like a butler almost of the car. Like, oh, I'm being stolen. I'm not going to drive. And they threaten him with a gun.
Apparently this AI hologram can be threatened by physical violence with a gun because Bruno pulls out his 50 mag and points it at hologram John Cleese. and says drive.
And they do.
Yeah. So where are we going, Nick?
We're going to some abandoned mine, pretty much off the grid. All these cities have basically been in like this dome bubble where you don't have to wear any protective equipment, anything like that. But they drive out of this protective bubble, and then they got to put on spacesuits, and they get into this abandoned mine. And there's this French-made robot who's programmed to drop things and then bend over and pick it up and show her panties as she picks it up.
And say, oops, and then there's old-timey panties. Panties. How long has Pluto been away from this abandoned mine that allegedly only him and Bruno know about? Does he say that?
He doesn't say that. I guess we're left to assume it's been since he was put away in jail. So 7-ish years.
So apparently this French-made robot has been operating fine on her battery for 7+ years. Bruno, meanwhile, needs to get plugged in, and he's smoking at the seams.
Yeah.
He's an old model. They do make that joke that he is an old robot model, but loyal to Pluto. But apparently this French-made robot is built different. And by the way, Bruno, Randy Quaid, slaps the French robot's ass.
He needs some robot strange.
So it's like, haha, get it? More misogyny.
If a robot harasses another robot, though, are there legal ramifications for robots?
That's the problem with these androids in this movie, is that they are given too much human elements.
Well, yeah, and I do want to say, when we say robots, these aren't like mechanical robots. They look exactly like people. Like they have skin.
It's like Westworld.
It's a person playing a robot. Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, yeah. Okay. In real life, we understand Randy Quaid is pretending to be a robot in this movie, but in this universe,
I'm just saying, for any of our listeners who haven't seen the film, this isn't a robot voice. This is a person playing a robot.
I guess we should set the stage because we are not a visual media. Yes, Randy Quaid is... Imagine Randy Quaid playing a robot, and the only visual alterations they give him is a silver suit and some very smooth-looking makeup to make his face look artificial, but not really.
If Randy Quaid looked like Dr. Evil from Austin Powers.
Oh, that's very accurate.
Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, these androids are human actors, and they're pretending to be robots, but they're given way too much human motivation. Like sex.
Yeah,
which is
sex,
weird.
Understanding, reading social cues. They're basically people.
So there's some sort of criminal database that they have access to, because Pluto says, search the initials WZW, and nothing comes up. And Rosario Dawson, being the smart one, says, what if it was MZM and it was upside down? And we're all like, oh. So this guy, Mike Mariucci, comes up, and he has video footage at the ready. Whatever this computer software is, it pulls it up. There's a short scene with Alec Baldwin playing Mike Mariucci. This clip on the TV is Alec Baldwin being interviewed by, those scenes when someone's let out of a court case and reporters are flooding
steps.
him. Yeah, it's on some sort of staircase, and they're like, what do you have to say about the allegations against you regarding the gambling something?
Well, we can put the 2 and 2 together, right? Gambling is coming to the moon. The mob wants to be in on the gambling. It's
been outlawed on Earth.
Yes.
So we're like, okay, Mike Mariucci, is he Rex Crater? Is that his alibi? Is that his code name?
That's what we're led to believe.
There's a small gag. Dina pulls out a cryo-frozen chihuahua. Pluto Nash has a frozen chihuahua in a cooler because apparently pets are outlawed on the moon.
It was part of his contraband, his smuggling.
It's left over from his smuggling days. Meanwhile, we cut away to Roland, Peter Boyle, in an elevator. He's with some guy, I guess his old coworker on the force. I don't know.
This was such an ancillary character. I don't think they even bothered to really explain it. He just started talking to him like old friends.
Yeah.
And he explains the idea of clones, and this guy might be a clone, and this Mike Mariucci guy might be involved in some shady shit. And they get in an elevator. This dude just is like, yeah, you don't know who your friends are. Then shoots him.
Yeah, so he gets capped in the elevator, and we're thinking, oh my god, climax. Speaking of climax, this mine that apparently Pluto and Bruno only know about, the goons show up.
As they do.
And I'm thinking, how the hell did these guys show up and know where they are? And they do pose that question. John Cleese, I believe, the AI in the Chrysler says, you probably did something stupid. And I was like, okay, I guess that's our reason for now. We actually will find out later.
Because this movie actually does have a fun twist, I believe.
So the goons show up again, another shoot 'em up scene. They have to escape in the Chrysler, and they shoot up the car so much that it blows up.
But they do a jump over like a moon valley. Low gravity car jump.
It's whatever that crater is called, like the Rift or the Riz or the Rizza, the Jizza. They call the smugglers like Riz jumpers or something. I believe they make the jump, but the car gets shot up so much that it just blows up. They're stranded, and it seems like all is lost. Bruno has to start carrying Dina and Pluto because they run out of oxygen because they're only in these spacesuits out in the moon's atmosphere. Luckily, a character named Felix Laranga shows up, played by Luis Guzman, who is a character actor and shows up in so many things.
Everything. I love Luis Guzman.
Luis Guzman's great.
Add him to the list of approved actors on the Just Play It podcast. Big fan of Luis Guzman.
Josh Lucas and Luis Guzman, you are always welcome to come on the show.
What'd you say? It's show business, not no business. And I'll tell you what, Luis Guzman is never out of a job.
He shows up. He doesn't know up, if you know what I'm saying.
Ew.
Felix Laranga is a huge Pluto Nash fan, and he's an aspiring smuggler himself. He just happens to be driving by.
I'll give them some credit there. If that's where Pluto's smuggling stash abandoned mine is, and they jump this chasm frequently as smugglers, it would make sense that there's other smugglers out there. I'll give them that.
I would give them a little bit more credit if Eddie Murphy or Pluto Nash said something along the lines of, I know a shortcut, this is an old smuggler's route.
Just why you need to be in a writer's room.
Thank you. Jesus Christ. Okay, so Luis Guzman, he agrees to drive them to Moon Beach. That's where allegedly, I guess, Mike Mariucci is, Rick's crater.
It's a big like casino town. It's like a Vegas strip almost.
They roll into Moon Beach, where gambling is legal. Wait, is Moon Beach in the same town as Club Pluto?
No, it's a different town. We don't know the geography of the moon very well.
This is a movie where I would love instructions at the beginning.
I think the gambling is going to go to where Pluto Nash's club is. I think gambling is about to enter that area, and that's why they wanted his club. I don't think they explicitly said that. I think it's supposed to be implied. I think when it's a world I don't know, you have to at least give me a hint about what's going on, and they definitely did not do that here.
No, a lot of things are left very vague. They're taking notes from Luc Besson, leaving it up to the audience to interpret. They're at this casino, allegedly owned by Rex Crater, and they stop by and pop into a Tony Francis show. Tony Francis made it big. Jay Moore makes a return. And they meet up with him backstage, and apparently he has a cloned wife. He met the perfect woman and decided to make a clone of her. And said,
wife
yep,
was apparently okay with it.
I have 2 of these now, and life is good.
That's got to be weird, though, right? Because if you're sitting there and you're feeling frisky one night, and you're like, I'm going to bang my wife. Obviously, the other wife is going to be involved in it. And is your real wife going to be okay with a clone of her also in the bedroom being a part of this?
This woman seems completely fine and down to clown for whatever.
I'm just thinking for myself, if there was another me, I couldn't do it. I'm not a narcissist, I guess. I don't love myself that much. I'd be like, that's gross. Get out of here.
They need some sort of convenient way to shelve Bruno for a couple scenes. So there's this random slot machine that rolls up to him and says, hey, don't you want to pull my slot?
Basically sexually harasses Bruno.
Don't you want to do something exciting tonight?
Now.
It's weird because Bruno's kind of a horny robot. So this slot machine is chasing Bruno.
Peekaboo, I found you. Come on, big boy. Right here in the lobby. Oh, baby.
He pulls the slot, and then he
You
breaks
sick
it,
bastard. Security.
and they have to throw him into casino jail.
Also, robots aren't allowed in the casino, I think, was a sign that they kind of panned by at some point when they entered the casino.
Because Bruno is wearing a blonde wig that Felix Laranga apparently had in his van.
It would have been a lot easier if they just were like, oh, no robots allowed here, so you have to check them in. Like, just put them away that way. Right? I didn't need the 5 to 10 minutes of him being harassed by a slot machine.
Oh, yeah.
After they meet up with Tony Francis, guess what? The goons are there and they get captured. So they are brought up to the top floor, I'll say, of Rex Crater's office. We are finally going to see if this is Alec Baldwin in the spinning chair. And lo and behold, this chair spins around and it's a clone of Pluto Nash.
This was actually a decent twist, but what I do hate is that they basically do this whole explaining the plot thing.
Because everyone's wondering, how did this happen? And immediately, not a second is wasted.
He's like, I bet you're wondering how this happened. You're like, the audience is like, yeah, I am.
This right-hand henchman explains verbatim.
Remember when they cut your appendix out 8 years ago in prison?
Yeah.
Gambling had just been outlawed on Earth, so my old boss, Mike Marucci, commissioned Dr. Runa Padankin to create a clone of someone who knew the way around the moon.
For what?
Marucci was starting a gambling operation up here. He needed someone to front for him. Someone intelligent that he could control.
So the reason I hate this, there's a lot of reasons I hate this. I know I'm not alone. I know most audiences hate this. Give me a clue or two in the storyline when they were doing their whole like body transformation thing and he had his shirt off for the beach body. If someone would have said, what's that scar there? And he said, oh, I got my appendix taken out in prison. And then I know about that. And then I know about cloning. And maybe I could put 2 and 2 together. At least I can go back and be like, oh, holy smokes. That they alluded to that. There wasn't even a scar on his body. Like, even the smallest scar, I might even give you a pass and go like, oh, you gave me a little something, something. But they gave you no clue. And then they're just like, here's the twist. And you never could have guessed it because we never gave you information. Audiences love figuring out the twist. We love it. It makes movies fun.
We love breadcrumbs along the way. And if it's something that if you are super smart and can pick up on, you get rewarded in a major way. And even if it's something you don't realize till the end and you go back and rewatch it, you appreciate the clues left behind.
One of my favorite movies of all time, it's not on many lists, but it's Inside Man with
Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington, and I believe it was Clive Owen. And then at the end, how they pulled off the bank heist was revealed to you, and you're like, oh my God, this is what they were doing all movie. This is why they were doing these random things. And I could have put it together. I would say 99.999% of viewers the first time never put it together. But when you look back at it, you're like, oh, I should have. And these guys just straight up just gave you information afterwards. They're just like, nope, here's the information, why it's a twist. And you could have never guessed because this is the moon world and you were supposed to know things. It's bullshit.
The only thing they give us quote unquote clues to is a timeline. In the beginning, Pluto says, I just got out of prison. And then we're fast forward to 7 years later. And Roland says, yeah, Dr. Ramekin, or whatever her name is, she died 8 years ago. So there's like, okay, there's some sort of timeline that we can kind of piece together, but no other information is given. Zero. There's a clone of Pluto Nash. He is Rex Crater. Mariucci, Alec Baldwin, apparently wanted a clone of someone who really knew the moon and the layout and the geography and how it works.
Clones get the full memory, too, of the person that's cloned. So that's important to know.
The most updated piece of DNA that you bring, they have it all. They have the memory.
It's like that moment in time. You create a new version.
It's that person frozen in time. So this clone got wise to the plan and pretty much became diabolical and decided to kill them both and take over operations. Boom. Mariucci, dead. Dr. Podenkin, dead. I'm Rex Crater. I look like Eddie Murphy.
And
It's me, baby.
whenever you have a clone, obviously they have to get into a fight, and they do. And then you have the moment of, I'm Pluto Nash, shoot him. No, I'm Pluto Nash, shoot him. I knew
was
it was
gonna
coming.
say, when they enter this casino, they say, oh, it's a black tie attire only, and they rent the suit. Rex Crater clone and Pluto Nash are wearing the exact same tuxedo. Like, what are the odds? It's almost as if they filmed this on the same day.
I could try to come up with an explanation, but it wouldn't satisfy.
If there was an additional plot twist, like Rex Crater actually wanted to be murdered and wanted the confusion to be there, and maybe set up the tux rental with Pluto Nash and said, hey, put him in the exact same outfit as me because I want to actually get murdered for a totally different mind-blowing reason. Sure. But nope.
Yeah.
He's just wearing the same exact tuxedo. Same exact tuxedo. So we get the old switcheroo treatment. Pluto Nash does a little clever, cheeky move and fools Rex's goons to actually shoot Rex. Plot twist, he doesn't actually die. So he starts strangling Pluto, and Pluto has to throw him out of the window, and he definitely dies from fall damage. He lands on a craps table, but I was really hoping that we were going to see Luis Guzman there, and he was going to be like, no, Pluto, you're dead. But they didn't even write that in. That would have been an easy laugh.
I think Luis Guzman got thrown out of the casino for using loaded dice on a craps table. I don't know why they had to throw him out of the casino. It's a totally unnecessary part of the film.
Maybe if it paid off later or drove the plot in a certain way, then sure.
Something.
Yeah, they're like, we need to get rid of Luis Guzman, which is a mistake.
Oh, also, there was a whole plan. It was Club Pluto was going to become Club Rex. Rex Crater wanted the club for himself to set up a gambling operation there. Yada yada. Anyway, that was the whole reason for the villainry. But Rex is dead. We go back to Club Pluto. More robot sex jokes.
Dude, there's so much robot sex jokes throughout this movie.
The Oops French maid robot now is a bartender. And Bruno's like, oh, I want to bang her, but I don't have the right adapter. Ha ha ha. Something. Pluto eventually makes Bruno the manager of the club. He hasn't really shown a good sense of rational behavior through the movie. He takes out his guns and shoots things a lot. I don't know how he'll do as a club manager, but it's supposed to be maybe a touching moment. Also, there's this, we never touched on it because I thought it was so terribly done. There's a love story between Pluto and Dina that comes to a head at the end, and apparently they're in love now, which was really weird and forced and never really truly developed as a storyline.
Keyword, apparently.
Yeah, and the movie just wraps up like that. So that wraps up our plot talk. That was the adventures of Pluto Nash.
Happy ending, yay.
Let's get ourselves into some nitpicks.
Let's nitpick this bitch. Nitpicks.
I want you to give yours, and then I have a massive nitpick.
Oh, okay. I will fast forward through mine very quickly. My nitpicks for this movie is the convenient plot devices, like the slot machine scene, the appendix surgery, Felix showing up. Like we said, we could have integrated Felix's introduction a little bit more naturally if they just threw out one line.
How many of these bad movies have we reviewed, James, where we say to ourselves, one line could have saved this bad plot device?
At least half of the movies that we have reviewed, because at least half of the movies we have had problems with. The two big problems that I have noticed in these podcast recordings are convenient plot devices or lack of consistency. Those are our two big main gripes with movies.
Those are the biggest things I look for.
Another nitpick I have is just the weird energy of this movie. It plays itself off as like a silly, goofy movie, but there's a lot of raunchy sex jokes.
Oh, yeah.
Really misogynistic themes. And it's just like, it doesn't work for me.
It's weird. It was a little similar to Fifth Element, actually, where you can't tell if it's trying to be a serious storyline or if they're just there for the one-liners. And there's a lot of lines that just kind of wink at the audience. You're like, I don't want you to wink at me. I want you to try to be funny and try to have a decent story. It definitely devolves a little bit into like kind of like a raunchy comedy. And you're like, where did this come from? Because that's not the vibe of the first 30 minutes. Then it kind of just slowly goes off the rails.
And we say this a lot. We say be one way all the way or be this way all the way. Like Ron Swanson, do not half-ass two things. Only whole-ass one thing.
Go full ass.
If you're going to be full ass, completely goofy and off the rails, do it. If you're going to be whole ass, completely serious, do it. When you try to make up or compensate for the goofiness with serious scenes and quote unquote touching scenes, it's not going to work most of the time unless it's really well done and there's a formula out there that works.
I'd say the only thing that I can think even kind of graces that between seriousness and comedy is maybe a movie like Inglourious Bastards, which is, I think, a great movie where there's a lot of like, but they're not trying to be funny. It just kind of ends up being funny and the audience has very enjoyable moments. And then there's also very serious moments. Like you have to be very talented and really, like you said, commit to it. You got to full ass it.
My last nitpick, which is the true definition of a nitpick, it's the title of this movie. It's called The Adventures of Pluto Nash, but it's just one adventure.
Yeah.
If it were like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where you're going on all these different subplots and adventures and shenanigans, or I'm going to throw out a very obscure movie. I don't know if you've seen it. It's an animated movie called The Phantom Toll Booth.
No.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm adding that to the list. So basically a movie where you kind of go on a bunch of little separate journeys and each journey is unique and weird and different. And you come out learning a small, unique lesson. It's called The Adventures of Pluto Nash. I thought I was going to get some sort of planet hopping, crazy trek adventure, but it's a singular narrative storyline about a guy outrunning the mob on the moon.
Yeah, it's not even really an adventure, if you want to call it that.
They should have just called it Pluto Nash, not The Adventures of Pluto Nash, because there's no adventures. This one quote unquote adventure, like you said, is barely an adventure. It's essentially an inconvenience.
A fight for survival. Yeah.
They should have called it The Inconvenience of Pluto Nash. That's my nitpicks for The Adventures or The Inconvenience of Pluto Nash.
I have a major nitpick, and I need you to follow me with this.
Following.
The whole plot is pointless.
Go on.
What was the goal of Rex Crater? What was his goal? What was the villain's goal? Explain it to me.
Rex Crater wanted Pluto's club just to make a monopoly of gambling venues on the moon.
Okay. What was he going to do with Pluto?
He was planning to buy the club and Pluto would go on his way, or he would murder him.
Okay. So you get control of the club and you rename it Club Rex like you wanted to. You are the clone of Pluto Nash. Wouldn't everybody just be like, what the fuck? Aren't you Pluto Nash? Why'd you change the name to Club Rex?
Well, he doesn't make an appearance. He only stays in his high tower office suite.
But that's what I'm saying. If you wanted to kill Pluto Nash and assume the identity of Pluto Nash, you should have just assassinated him. It would have been really, really, really easy. Why'd you try to buy him out? And then you blow up the club and then hunt him down to kill him? What do you do once Pluto Nash is hunted down and dead? You just come out of the woodwork as the Pluto Nash clone?
I don't know why they didn't just assassinate him and then Rex Crater can waltz on in and say, I'm Pluto Nash and I own this place.
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand that.
That's a really
best case scenario, you kill Pluto Nash and then you are Pluto Nash, but you call yourself Rex Crater. And if you kill Pluto and you come in as Rex, are you just going to be Rex Crater now? You're clearly a clone of Pluto Nash.
Who is very well known.
Who's extremely well known. What's the fucking goal? What's the point of this? If you seriously are like, I'm going to buy him out and he's going to go away, you clearly have to kill him. You have to kill him because there can't be two Pluto Nashes out there. Pluto Nash would eventually be like, hey, what the fuck? Who's this guy? You can't have two Pluto Nashes on the moon. People are going to ask questions.
The moon's a small place.
I'm sitting here and I'm like,
what you're saying is
what
this
was going to be the
movie
point?
Is pointless.
It is. I don't understand. Like, the conflict makes no sense to me. They were going to buy the club. I don't know why you would blow up the joint that you're trying to buy and monopolize. Just fucking blow it
if you're
up.
blowing up the club, what that says is, hey, I'm making a statement to all the other club owners. When I make you an offer, you take it.
But he's trying to purchase that building.
It makes no sense if he's trying to gain that as an asset and then blows it up. 100%. That was my thought as well. This movie wanted to have a crazy twist, and the really good movies that have a crazy twist will have you thinking about it afterwards. As in, how did they pull that off, or what was the goal, or how would this play out if it didn't go this way? This movie does the opposite.
Yeah. Clearly Pluto Nash is famous on the moon.
You're thinking, oh, this is the end result. Why wouldn't they just do this instead?
Yeah, he was like, I'm going to take over your club and call it Club Rex. If he would have said, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to be Pluto Nash now and it's still going to be Club Pluto and I'm going to turn it into a casino, I'd give you a little more credit. But you're going to take it over as Rex Crater, who is Pluto Nash.
The confusion of Pluto Nash.
So that's my nitpick. My nitpick is that the whole motivation makes zero fucking sense to me. I'm lost in it all. I think it, like you said, it was a twist for the sake of being a twist, and because they're like, we like Eddie Murphy and we know Eddie Murphy knows how to work with two Eddie Murphys on the screen because we've done the clumps and shit. So we're just like, we like this technology. We're going to just keep using it. Seriously, this is like the second or third time at this point we've seen two Eddie Murphys on the screen. We should have seen it coming.
So, Nick, you're saying this movie did not work and that it was very pointless. Well, like we said in the beginning, it did not work for the critics and it did not work in the box office. So now it's time for the budget reveal. Nick?
Okay.
Please go ahead. Think long and hard about this movie. What was put into this movie, what it was about, how much money you think was put into this movie, followed by how much money you think they got in box office revenue.
Okay. So
and walk me. You can walk me through your reasoning too.
That's what I'm going to do here. So this is a little tough because the cast is really good. So they spent money on the cast. Eddie Murphy is coming off of, he had just done Shrek. He was the voice of Donkey. He's a feature name. Yeah.
Very sought after lead man.
Yes. Jay Moore at the same time. This is kind of like you said, you see him in a lot of movies. This is kind of heights. Randy Quaid is sought after just a couple years beforehand. He was in Independence Day. He is a household name at this point. Whatever. Rosario Dawson coming off of, I believe, Clerks. She's making a name for herself. So the cast is a decent amount. Stealth was 135. I don't think this was nearly as much because there wasn't that much CGI involved. 85. I'm gonna put it at 85 million budget, and I'll box office it at 22. I'll just go 25% of the budget.
What would you consider close percentage wise?
I'd say if I was within 5 to 10 million, that's fair.
5 to 10 million for both?
Yeah.
Okay, so the budget was actually $100 million.
Jeez.
You're not crazy off there. But
I think my reasoning was there. I'd say a lot of it was probably cast and props.
And you said the box office revenue was how much?
I said about 22.
Try 7.1.
That is so bad.
This movie made 7. This movie made 7% of its money.
You couldn't even draw enough people to see it once. Let's take the average ticket price at $10, right? 2002. That's high ending it, right? I'm high ending $10 I don't know if this came out in any kind of like widescreen or whatever.
Yeah, this is not matinee. This is opening night prices in 2000.
Yeah, let's call it $10. Like everybody's going to go see a lot of movies, right?
$10, so expensive.
If a movie's hyped up, you'll go see it once in theaters, right? Opening weekend, second weekend. So a 7.1 million, divide that by $10. You're telling me only 700,000 people ended up seeing this at the box office? That is a fucking disaster.
That's not even the entire population of San Jose.
That's bad, dude. That is bad. Something we just start doing on this podcast is looking at other movies that open the same weekend. Maybe we can try and explain something. Maybe the time of year. I want to say this was like a summer release.
This was released on August 16th.
Gosh, that should be right up your alley for money making. $7 million on $100 million budget.
I do like seeing the run times in theaters. It tickles me. I feel like these days there is a really high ramp up for the first 3 to 4 weeks for movies. And as we see a lot these days, 40 days later, it's on Disney Plus. Like there's like a 45-day window. And it's like, hey, for 45 days, this movie's in theaters. And then guess what? It'll be available on streaming in a month and a half. Back in the day, I felt like movies were in theaters for months.
You were usually looking at 8 months to a year for any sort of home release. DVD, VHS kind of deal.
This movie was in theaters from August 16th to October 3rd of 2002. So
that is a short run in the theaters.
That's 1.5 months. So maybe they pulled it because they're like, this ain't doing too hot.
That is a bomb. Making 7% back of the budget in the box office is the definition of bomb.
Bad.
That might be one of the worst returns percentage-wise of all time.
I think it is, and that's why it's on all these lists of worst movies of all time or worst performing movies of all time. The opening box office revenue was $2 million. It was $2,182,900 to be precise.
Wow.
The domestic box office was 4.4. The international box office was 2.6. We are left with a measly 7.1 worldwide. $7,103,973 is what Pluto Nash brought in. Nick, let's watch this trailer.
The battle between pretty evil.
Let's get it right this time.
Pretty good.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Look at me.
Begins.
Well, we were thinking a little more bubblage.
Hey!
Oh, yeah.
Eddie Murphy.
A pleasure to meet you, Pluto.
You married twins, huh?
No, they're not twins. I met the perfect woman and then I had a clone.
Which one's which?
Who cares?
The Adventures of Pluto Nash.
Whoa! Whoa!
So the trailer really sold it as some schlocky comedy.
Nick, you're using the word schlocky a lot lately.
I am, because that's what it is.
So let's dive into why I think this performed bad. I'll go first. So I think a lot of the money went into the set design and paying the actors. So Eddie Murphy specifically was paid $20 million to do this movie. So boom, 20% of your budget is going directly to one individual. That's not including Rosario Dawson or Randy Quaid. I can see them, being paid like $5 million or something, or maybe even 1 to 5. I don't know.
I could see the total cost of, the cast being in the 45 range.
Yeah. So you're left with, a little bit over half of your budget to pay the actual crew who is, slaving away 12 hours a day and 5-6 days a week on this movie. However,
editing,
however that set was run.
Paying Ron Underwood something.
I have not seen a trailer where there's a narrator explaining to me what the plot is and why I should find this funny.
Another thing I noticed in the trailer is they had the 2 Eddie Murphys on the screen. You basically gave.
That's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Because so That was my second note. So I said, first off, this is an era of American cinema where the trailers talk down to the viewer, and they're treating this as we know your dumbass is going to come to the theaters and watch Eddie Murphy do his thing. Now give us money. I think we just had enough.
It's an awful trailer. Maybe one of the worst I've ever seen.
Network TV does this a lot. I think they cater towards middle America. So Fox and CBS shows that have been running for decades, they just have all these cheesy dialogue and just kind of corny scenes and blocking and coloring. And it's very poppy. So that's where they kind of filtered like, hey, all you dumbasses, like, come watch 911 or come watch CSI. Shots fired. I used to love CSI. Sorry. Network TV is just, that's their bread and butter, is catering to middle America who just want to.
Well, they want somebody to tune in and basically be like, that's me, or I relate with this. And here's the deal. You're not going to relate with a moon man. Sorry, that's just the reality.
Secondly, what I wrote down in my notes is the trailer shows you the big reveal of a cloned Pluto. So if you saw this trailer, at one point
there's going to be 2 Plutos.
Yeah, if you saw this trailer, you're like, okay, so at a certain point in this movie, there is a different Pluto. And I'm recognizing that he's wearing a certain costume. He's wearing a tuxedo. So I know at a certain point, he'll meet this twin clone of his while wearing this tuxedo. And if I see that happening in the third act, I'm going to put 2 and 2 together and say, hey, that memory of me watching the trailer, I guess Pluto Nash is also the villain.
The other issue they ran into is they could have easily, without some of the sex jokes, they could have made it a more acceptable PG-13 movie and had it been something that you might take your kids to. But if you look at the trailer, they show that scene with the body changing and them growing out the boobs and the butt, and they're kind of making these like Jay Moore's joke of like, I cloned my wife. How do you tell them apart? Who cares? It seems like cheap adult humor, and it's like you've narrowed down your audience to people who just like stupid joke comedies.
You have alienated so many people.
Summer is family movie time, right? The kids are out of school. You go see a movie together. So you alienated that whole crowd, anybody with kids. And how many, like on a date night, if I'm a woman and I'm like, yeah, that looks like the kind of comedy I'm into.
I'm into feeling insecure about my body.
I want to see what Eddie Murphy wants in a woman. They like the selling of this movie. They absolutely failed. It's bad.
Trailers do have a lot of influence, and these days,
big time.
There's teaser trailers, there's trailer trailers, there's final trailers, there's social media promotions. Those deal out a lot of minimal information to generate hype. Now, back in 2002, the game plan from Castle Rock Pictures or Castle Rock Entertainment and Village Roadshow Pictures was we're going to show you all the uncomfortable jokes in one trailer and also give away partial information about the big reveal. And we are going to expect you to come see this because it's Eddie Murphy and he's a hilarious guy. And it takes place in space.
Yeah, that's pretty. You kind of hit the nail on the head there.
The last thing I'll say about why this budget was so high is the set design. I mentioned it looked like a laser tag arena. But I will shout out Bill Brzezicki, who was a production designer on this movie. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Sets were very large and impressive, but I think he was misdirected, and the treatment of this movie really made it come off as corny and not, I think it just didn't do the set justice. So I will shout out the production designer.
What do you say we get ourselves into a bit of our final review here, James?
Final review. Fight.
We have discussed why this movie bombed because of the way it was promoted and the allocated money where that went. We think a lot went to the set, a lot went to the actors, and the promotion really kind of, I think, shot itself in the foot with that. But now we need to decide if this movie did in fact deserve to flop. So here's what the other guys are saying. Tomato meter. The critics, 5% of critics thought this was a good movie.
Thought it was an acceptable film.
Just a general thumbs up. Yep, this is a good movie. 5%. I'm shocked that
Like
it's
to meet
5.
those 5.
I am shocked that it's 5%.
I wouldn't be surprised if somebody said, yeah, this just hit the 0.
The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, 19% of the audience thought that this was a okay movie.
That doesn't surprise me. Like you said,
No,
it kind
I
of
think
catered
that's
to that middle crowd. And I think there's at least 19% who would have been like, ha, I laughed.
I would be very satisfied if 19% of our population thought this way and thought that this was acceptable. That's fine with me.
Yeah, that's a decent. Yeah, it's an 80-20 rule.
If anything, that's kind of better than what I expect from us as a species. Metacritic, the weighted average critic score is a score of a 12, which is considered a 1.2 if you're bringing it in the 10 scale.
So pretty much directly between the critics and the audience from Rotten Tomatoes.
This is where the wild card comes in. The Metacritic audience score is actually a 7.7. That's a little shocking to me.
It might be kind of a Yelp phenomenon where the only time you leave a review is if you really like it or you really hate it. But because this is such an outlier from everything else that I feel like we could just kind of toss this out as some sort of...
I'm going to call this one a fluke. Though the true wild card, the IMDb score, is 3.8, which seems a little bit more on brand. On average, across the board, this movie does score below a 40% through all these media outlets. So we have set the bar that a movie is considered a flop by the Just Play It podcast standards if it is below a 40% average. If we consider it above a 5.5, that is its saving grace, if it should not be considered a flop. So I want you to read me your laughable log line and just roll on into your final review and your general thoughts on the film. And of course, with your popcorn points.
So I said, a clearly lonely and horny club owner on the moon randomly becomes the target of the moon mob and needs to travel the moon to find out why they want him off the moon. It's very moon-based. I did notice that in this film. We learn they're on the moon, and then everything else is like the moon. It's like, I got it. You're on the fucking moon. Thanks. Everything's called like moon landing, moon haven, moon this, moon that. I'm like, okay, you're on the moon. I gave this a 2.6. And I say, yes, this absolutely deserved to flop. Let me tell you why. So the movie really had no direction. I went over this in my nitpicks. The story, it doesn't, like, the whole premise doesn't really make sense to me once you learn the twist. Now, I did say at the beginning, the movie actually started with a good premise. It started with some decent characters and some passable world building. Like the first 20, 30 minutes I was in. Then they introduced Bruno, and then again, the whole thing kind of became this weird, bad humor extravaganza. It went downhill, cheap jokes, bad one-liners, and a really weird love story that was never developed. The acting was fine. The twist was okay. I couldn't see it coming, and it eventually made no sense to me, but I was like, oh, okay, there's a twist here. In the end, though, just an all-around failure of a movie, given the names that were attached. Was just low effort bullshit. So I gave it a 2.6. The reason I went with 2.6 is it is one below Stealth. It is one below Stealth. I would rewatch Stealth before I rewatched Pluto Nash. It is clearly still better than Hulk, but it's a 2 point. It's an easy 2.6 for me. At no point could you sit here and say like they attempted to make a decent film.
Are you done?
I'm done. I don't feel like that should be a surprise, given what I've given Stealth, what I've given Hulk. Like I was almost going to give it more than Stealth, but I would gladly rewatch Stealth before I watch Pluto Nash.
Hilarious that you say that, because boy howdy do I have something to reveal to you after I give my laughable logline, followed by my popcorn points, followed by my final thoughts.
I'm so ready for this.
My honest logline for The Adventures of Pluto Nash is: Pluto Nash is a former lunar smuggler turned successful club owner until his establishment is the victim of a bomb attack by the space mafia, who seek total control of gambling operations, a moon mob monopoly, aka a moonopoly. And Nick, you're not gonna. Did you look at my notes?
No.
Because you're not gonna fucking believe this, but I also gave it a 2.6 popcorn points.
It's our first agreement. Mark it. This is a moment in history.
Because I looked at your review of Stealth and I said this needs to go below Nick's standards of Stealth. Because
it has to.
In my eyes, it is not a better movie than Stealth, and I don't think it should be a better movie than Stealth in Nick's eyes as well. And you went in on that movie.
It's a bad movie. This is a bad movie.
This is a horrible movie.
Honestly, I was going to go lower, but I'm like, I can't put it on the same level as 2003's Hulk.
No, you fucking hated that movie.
It's not past tense. I actively hate that movie. And future tense, I will continue to hate that movie. There's nothing that movie can do to ever redeem itself in my eyes. Eric Bana could come on this podcast and try to defend it, and I would tell him no. Anyway, back to the great Pluto Nash.
Yeah, so I give it a 2.6 popcorn points specifically based on your review of Stealth, which is funny that you say that. We're on the same wavelength with the Adventures of Pluto Nash. If it didn't do anything right, it did bring us together on a very telepathic wavelength level.
I love that. This is a moment in history.
Nick and James, what is this? Episode 10. We are on the same page. Boom. A 2.6 that falls into the empty bag category. This is an empty bag of popcorn for me. For my personal rating system, this is in the category of bothersome and doesn't make sense.
Just bothersome.
Like below 2 is like I actively, like you with Hulk, I hate that this movie was made. I hate what it stands for, and I cannot believe that it got made. This movie was not interesting. I had very little reaction. Honestly, the 2.6 comes from the set design, which I touched upon. I thought it was very vast and impressive, but on the flip side, it just doesn't work for the movie's tone. And the other part of the 2.6 popcorn points came from the few robot-related non-sexual jokes that I may have chuckled at. I think the only thing I actually laughed at was Randy Quaid's character Bruno saying, "Oh, I can project a phone call that someone is having across the room, but I can't listen at the same time. What are they saying?" He's like, "I'm an old model. Only the 87s can do that. I'm a 64 or whatever." I may have chuckled at that.
Yeah, he did that. He was playing back the phone call that he intercepted, and then he looks at the person next to him. What did it say?
I'll admit that I had a few chuckles along the way, but very little and far and few between. The answer is a unanimous yes. This does deserve a flop. I'm sorry. Flop myth not busted. This is a true flop, and it deserved it.
Every step of the way.
I think the studios think Eddie Murphy, smash success. He's going from a kick-ass comic movie star, very successful stand-up specials and comedy tours. And this movie is goofy and silly, like it's for kids. Like you were saying about the trailer, they could have sold it as a family-friendly comedy, but they kind of threw in all that weird, crude, sexually charged humor into the trailer. The plot moves along, but it's perpetuated by convenience. The big reveal is not long-lasting. It's like, oh, Pluto Nash is a clone. Oh my God. Let's see the fallout from this. No, he dies 7 minutes after he's introduced. You could have relished in that big reveal, but instead you decided to move on, just like everything else in this movie. My big gripe with the ending is, if Rex Crater is a clone, where did all these evil traits come from? He's supposed to be a 1-to-1 copy, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Jay Moore's wives are. Jay Moore's wives are the same exact person. Like we discussed before, if they said one line, something along the lines of, oh, the cloning process is not foolproof and it can alter the DNA or it can alter brain activity or it's not a perfect copy. You know, you say cloning gives off some sort of deformity, which is why it was outlawed on Earth. You know, build the world a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot. Or if we knew that, say, Pluto Nash reformed himself in prison, and this guy never went through that reform. He's the just got into prison version of Pluto Nash, and Pluto Nash actually had some sort of good guy revelation in prison, and that's where the dichotomy came from.
So at the end of the day, this is an empty bag of popcorn for me. I went to the concession stand. I paid $7 for a bag of popcorn, and they literally handed me an empty bag of nothing.
It also, like, I almost want to retroactively deduce points for the way that the trailer gave away the twist. That is, I can't believe the studio okayed that. Like, that's a good trailer.
Giving minimal information, but enough information to let you know what the movie's going to look like. That's it. That's what makes a good trailer.
Just tease me a little bit, man. Just tickle my tits a little bit.
Pluto Nash goes straight into the ass.
It's just a dry entry, and they're like, this is what you're going to get, and you're going to like it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want that. And they say, we don't care. You're getting 2 Eddie Murphys in a scene. So here's a question. It's a flop. Did Ron Underwood deserve to have his movie career ended?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, moving on.
It's a dry entry and an empty bag from the Just Play It podcast, and that is our review.
No one likes the sandpaper entry.
That is our review of the Inconvenience of Pluto Nash from 2002. Unfortunately, we couldn't bust this flop myth.
Not this time. Maybe next time.
But please join us next week. We are going back to the 80s, and this movie title includes a divine word and a body organ word.
And it stars a young version of a famous actor now who maybe not a lot of people saw the younger version of this guy.
So why don't you stick that in your search bar and Google it?
Yeah, bitches. I think it's time to sign off, but I do have one last word. F*** off, Ron Underwood. And James, say your line, my friend. Let's get out of here.
Hey, Ron Underwood, you need to hit the road, and we are going to start heading gone. Peace out, bitches.
Damn right.
We out this bitch. See you on the moon. To the moon!
Deuces! Yeah.